Hello, I'm Justin Lewis.
I'm Ryan Planey.
I'm Josh Corey.
We are Team 2, and today we will be discussing research that we completed on internship and full-time careers for marketing and logistics students at Central Michigan University.
While looking across the data from our research, we had some significant findings that we will start off by summarizing for you. First off, we found out the most important attribute for logistics majors when selecting a full-time job are compensation and culture fit. Next, we found that when comparing between intern and full-time position decision-making, the importance of attributes are very similar between two situations, except for a few attributes. These attributes being career advancement, compensation, and alignment with major. Finally, we found that there is room for improvement in CMU's internship program. Work, environment, and atmosphere, and meaningful work are the top areas for improvement.
Here's our agenda for today. We will start by giving a short introduction, then we will discuss the different research methods that we used along with data collection methods and possible limitations. After that, we will dive into results, which will be the bulk of the presentation. Finally, we will wrap things up with a summary.
So why is this stuff important? We can tell you. Research like this can provide major insight into why students choose certain career paths and also into the current state of internship opportunities at CMU. Insight like this can put CMU in a much better situation to prepare its students for life in the real world, leading to less of this and more of this.
Now it's time to go through the research methods. The three methods we used were choice modeling, MaxDiff, and CX, or customer experience. We go through the details of each method individually, but we will start off first with some general info on how the data was collected and limitations that may be present in the research.
Data was collected from a sampling frame of undergraduate marketing and logistics students at Central Michigan University. The students were administered 3 different web-based surveys, one for each research method, and the students were awarded points for quality completes.
Here are some possible limitations of the research. First off, being that we are only pulling from marketing and logistics students from CMU, the sample is small and can only represent the mindset of CMU students and not students from other universities. Fatigue may have set in as students did take 3 moderate-length surveys and likely tried to do them all in one sitting. Another possible limitation is the students' lack of experience in the real world. For instance, on the choice survey, it would be difficult for logistics students to make an accurate judgment on what it's like to work in a plant if their only real-world experience was an internship in an office. Overall, though, we are confident in the data gathered from our research.
The first method is choice modeling. We decided to analyze the data gathered from logistics majors exclusively, so the sample size was only 34. In this survey, students were given 3 job offers and selected the one that they would accept based on attribute presence in the offers. The respondent repeated this process and made a total of 14 choices. The data gathered from the surveys will allow us to see the importance of attributes as well as the preference levels for those attributes.
The next method is MaxDiff. The sample size here was 88, and this survey allowed students to choose most and least important attributes for both internship and full-time decisions. The scores of the attributes will sum up to 100 and provide us with excellent variation.
Now for customer experience. The sample size here was 84. This survey allowed students who have had internships through CMU to evaluate their experience at those internships. The survey also asked students whether or not there is room for improvement in CMU's intern program, and if so, what it is that needs to be improved. The data from this method will allow us to compare CMU with industry averages to determine competitive advantages and disadvantages, which along with the correlation data, which will allow us to determine where our strengths and weaknesses lie.
Now we will get into the results. We will go about this by going through graphs of the results from our 3 methods and sharing the importance of each graph as we get to it.
First off is choice modeling. Here is attribute importance for logistics majors when selecting full-time jobs. As you can see, compensation is the most important attribute for students when selecting a full-time job, followed by culture fit. The least important attribute is atmosphere or work environment. We will now go to the preference levels and start with the most important attribute and work our way down. Here is compensation by annual salary. As you can see, there's a lot of variation from $40,000 to $60,000. This goes to show the $10,000 interval of starting pay can make a huge difference in students' decisions. This graph shows culture fit within the company. This graph also shows significant variation between whether or not the student is a culture fit with the company. This goes to show the companies must communicate their values and culture to potential recruits. This graph shows distance from home. As you can see, a location that is a 1 hour drive away from the student's hometown is highly preferred. A 4 hour drive and air travel required are almost equally undesirable. Now for location. As you can see, variation is starting to go down, meaning the attributes are playing a less significant role in the decision. Based on these results, though, suburbs are the most desired location. Here is type of company. 3PL is the preferred type of company, but there is not a lot of variation between the three different types of firm. Finally, we have atmosphere. These levels are close to zero, meaning this attribute has very little influence on the full-time decision for logistics majors.
Now for max diff. First, we look at attribute importance for internship position decisions. As you can see, atmosphere, advancement, and culture fit are all near the top, while social activities, after work, size of organization, and dress code are close to zero. Now the same thing for full-time. Again, the same three attributes are all close to zero. This time, however, career advancement is the lead by a significant margin. Now to compare internship and full-time attributes. For the most part, they are very aligned. Some differences can be seen, though, in advancement, compensation, and alignment with major. It makes sense that students would put more weight on advancement and full-time opportunities as internships are usually only a few months, so there is not as much expectation for promotion. Compensation also makes sense to be higher on the full-time as students likely feel that they will be locked into a salary longer, where in internships is more about the experience than the money. Finally, alignment with major is likely showing more important to internships, as an internship is when a student wants to do a test run on their field of study and make sure it really is for them.
Now we will move on to customer experience, or CX. Remember that this is students' experience at CMU internships. The first aspect of CX to discuss is performance. This involves Net Promoter Score, which is a score based on the how likely would you be to recommend CMU's internships question. Respondents who gave a 9 or 10 on this question are promoters, 7 or 8 are passives, and 6 and below are detractors. The NPS will be derived by subtracting the percentage of detractors from the percentage of promoters. As you can see, 46.9% of respondents gave CMU a 9 or a 10 on the recommend question, and 31.2% gave a 6 or below, leading to an NPS score of 15.7%. Now we will look at performance ratios. These ratios are determined by taking the industry averages of performance on different attributes and running an us versus them on all performance attributes. These ratios will help us to determine whether we have a competitive advantage or disadvantage on certain performance attributes. I should also note that by industry average, we are talking about other universities in Michigan that offer similar programs. Here's a graph of the performance ratios for each attribute. Any attributes above the green line are significant advantages where we are outperforming the competition, and any attributes below the red line are areas for improvement as we are getting outperformed in them. Attributes between the lines are insignificant. As you can see, the significant advantages of CMU's internship program that need to be maintained are variety of work, reputation of the company, culture fit, meaningful work, amount of work, compensation, alignment with major, and interesting work. Areas where we are being outperformed are size of company, social activity, atmosphere, dress code, onboarding programs, and stress level. Now we move on to importance, where we determine how the independent variables, which are the attributes, are driving the dependent variable, which is Net Promoter Score. Here's a quick glance at a graph showing the correlation values for the attributes. The higher the correlation, the more the attribute is driving our NPS score. Here's the data put into a table. As you can see, we have identified reputation, meaningful work, and culture fit as the key drivers of whether or not a student recommends CMU's internship program. Some second-tier drivers are directly below, and stress level is of absolutely no importance. Now we will wrap up CX with improvement. As you can see, there is room for CMU to improve its internship, as close to 60% of students answered yes when asked if CMU needed to improve. This leads into stated performance analysis opportunities, which shows the percentage of each attribute that students selected to be their top priority of improvement. As you can see, meaningful work was the most selected area for improvement by CMU interns. Even though this was a competitive advantage for us, students clearly feel that CMU could be doing a better job of matching students with internships that allow them to do meaningful work. Because meaningful work is hard to quantify, it may be necessary to do some research triangulation in the future and find out what students perceive as meaningful work through qualitative research. Now we will go through a performance importance analysis, which will allow us to determine our major and minor strengths and weaknesses. As you can see, work atmosphere is driving NPS significantly, but is also a competitive disadvantage, making it a major weakness of CMU's intern program. Again, some research triangulation may be needed, as qualitative research would be necessary to find out what students are looking for in a work atmosphere. Luckily though, this is our only major weakness. Here are our major strengths. Again, luckily for us, there are a bunch of them. Reputation, culture fit, meaningful work, interesting work, and alignment with major have all been identified as major strengths. It's interesting to note that meaningful work, which was listed as the #1 priority for improvement by students earlier, is also a major strength. Here are some minor weaknesses. A trend throughout has definitely been that social activities, dress code, and size of company have been consistently low on attribute importance, meaning that we should not spend as much time worrying about them. Here are some of our minor strengths. And finally, here are attributes that fell into the zone of indifference.
Now we will sum everything up for you. Overall, it appears that CMU's internship and full-time programs are in a good place. There are some findings, however, that we need to be aware of to have continued success in the future.
On the full-time side, it's important to realize that compensation and cultural fit are the two most important attributes for students. Measures need to be taken in order to ensure that students are matched with opportunities that offer these two things.
On the internship side, meaningful work and work atmosphere are both areas needing improvement. Some qualitative research may need to be done with the students in order to allow CMU to communicate with companies to improve their internships in those areas.
Finally, when comparing the two, it is important to realize that career advancement and compensation are attributes that should be considered more heavily on the full-time side, while alignment with major should be considered more on the internship side of things.
That's all we have. Thanks for taking the time to listen to our presentation, and have a great rest of your day.